Welcome to the Marketing Remix, presented by Red Door Interactive. I'm Reed Carr, CEO of Red Door Interactive. Our show is a senior level marketer's resource for navigating our ever-evolving landscape. In each episode, in about 20 minutes, experts from different marketing disciplines representing different buyer touchpoints tackle one important marketing topic. Then, what do you need to know, and how does it affect the buyer? Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Remix by Red Door Interactive. We're here to talk about tools of the trade, Google Analytics 360. As the marketing industry and the world at large continues to experience its own digital transformation, marketers have seen an explosion of channels, platforms, and of course data. To better understand the reality of today's marketing landscape and the tools at our disposal, look no further than Google Marketing Platform, Google's unified advertising and analytics platform built for smarter marketing and better results. In this episode, we'll explore an integral part of the Google Marketing Platform, Analytics 360, a suite of analytics products that allow enterprise marketers to analyze consumer behavior, develop relevant insights, and deliver a more engaging brand experience. We're here with Andy Batten, our Senior Director of Data Analytics, Marketing Analytics, and Business Intelligence, and John Ferris, President of Red Door Interactive, to talk about their perspectives on the tool, the trends, and more. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks, Reed.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, at a high level, let's set the stage here. What is the bigger topic here? We're here to talk about Google Analytics 360, but what it fits within is this Google Marketing Platform. So, at high level, what is that? John, maybe tell us a little bit about Google Marketing Platform.
Yep. Yeah. So we first learned about Google Marketing Platform at last year's Google Marketing Live conference. And when we saw the rollout at the conference, it very much seemed like just a rebrand of the DoubleClick products more than anything that Google had acquired several years ago. And then they did have kind of what they were calling an integration component, but it was a little bit of vaporware because ultimately it was like a single login page for all of your different Google 360 products so that you didn't have to go to separate URLs to log in to each. But there wasn't a lot of true integration there as far as we could see. Since then, in the last 6 months or so, they have really started to pull the platform together and provide a lot of documentation for marketers about how you can integrate the various components. So the various components are Google Analytics 360, which we'll dive deeper into today, and then all of the former DoubleClick products that Google acquired. So that was Google Campaign Manager, which was the former DoubleClick ad server. It's Google Search Ads 360, which was the former bid management tool for search from DoubleClick. And then you have Google Display and Video 360, our least favorite in terms of names.
Yeah, more verbose.
So we call that GDV 360 internally, and that is the old DoubleClick demand side platform, programmatic advertising platform.
Okay. So that sets the stage. There's a lot of different ways, obviously, from a display standpoint and data standpoint to kind of connect those two components, obviously all in the overall ecosystem of advertising and then performance. So now to focus on Analytics 360, what are the key features of that product? Or more specifically, maybe what's different about it that maybe the marketers have become used to in Google Analytics? I think that's what people tend to be a little bit more familiar with. Andy, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say as the, customer journeys are getting longer, more devices, there's so much more data flowing in. One of the biggest challenges, one of the challenges that typically we run into is needing to join that view across those devices and understanding how users are interacting with your brand, interacting with your ads, what they're being exposed to, and how their behavior might change across devices. So being able to get all of that into one place where conversions are happening on your site, but also seeing those acquisition details is one of the key things that that Google Analytics 360 gets you. And then there's, the laundry list of features you get with GA360 is pretty long, and we can go through, I think, some of them that are the probably they get the most attention.
Most compelling, yeah.
Sampling. Yeah. I mean, what we run into frequently is sampling. For those that use Google Analytics, the free edition, you are exposed to sampling, and that really causes a lot of problems for people.
Andy, can you explain what sampling is real quick for those that may not be familiar with the details of this?
Yeah, yeah. So Google will take a snapshot of your data, and if you exceed a certain amount of hits over a certain period, and really it's defined by users, Google will try to extrapolate how much traffic you actually got instead of trying to crank through their entire database of all hits, sessions, users, and show you that exact number. So you end up with numbers, rounded to 0 and 5, and it can directionally, it's usually still pretty good, but you start to run into problems when you're doing, calculations and building calculated metrics off two different numbers that were both sampled. Can really start to change the story in your data. So we run into that one quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it just now that mucks things up in a handful of different ways. But I mean, when you're talking about large brands or something like that, is it that big of a deal? Or I mean, I think people are really trying to get a lot more detailed these days.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a bigger deal, and a lot of people don't realize they're being sampled, or their data is being subject to sampling, and so you have to really kind of be familiar with how you're pulling the data and use some different ways to avoid sampling. But with Google 360, you don't even have to worry about it. There still is a sampling threshold, but it's much higher that most people would never approach it, and so it really becomes a non-factor. And Google continues to change what they're tracking and the actual measurement tag itself. And so things like timing hits, so tracking your site speed, and those kinds of things are just built into Google, and it'll do it automatically. But that counts towards your hits, and a lot of people don't realize that. So there's things that can impact your how subject you are to sampling that you may not even realize, and that's what we run into quite a bit, in our kind of day to day. Is some people are being sampled because their implementations aren't very solid.
So I mean,
but Google 360 helps you get past.
Yeah, and it's about accuracy at that point, and you don't know how inaccurate you may be given certain circumstances, the way the implementation was, things like that. And so you're saying basically that Analytics 360 cleans a lot of that up.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, and now some of the other features that are big highlights.
Yeah, and I think some of the ones that are easier to talk to, but probably don't get as much press, are just around the SLAs. So Google, with GA360, you have product support as part of any Google 360 engagement. So typically, there any bugs or anything like that come up in the tool, or if you're just wondering if this is a bug or the tool's not behaving as you would expect, you can actually connect with a real person and get that support. Whereas with the free edition, you don't get that. And then in terms of data freshness, where your data availability is down to 4 hours. And what that means is that Google doesn't call your data final until 24 hours later. And so typically, even with the free edition, you can see your data pretty quickly, but it reprocesses again, and your data is not considered final until 24 hours. But in the case of GA360, it's you get that shortened quite a bit to 4 hours. And so for much larger brands that get a lot of traffic, this may come into play and be a bigger factor for them.
Well, that would make a huge difference if you're running a pretty, a time of day campaign, or if you're expecting, doing a product launch or something like that. I mean, you really need to know this stuff so you can make adjustments quickly.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, in Google, free and the 360 version both have real-time reporting for, monitoring those things. But in terms of being able to report on final data, you can do it much faster with 360.
Right. Okay. Anything else that you feel like we should be highlighting?
Yeah, there's, like I said, there's a lot of different ones. I would say one of the bigger areas that we take advantage of a lot, and when we're doing implementations and activating 360 is just the customization, and that covers a lot of different ground. So, in Google Analytics terms, this is you get 200 custom dimensions and custom metrics, and what those are essentially places you can store custom attributes about the user, about the page, anything you want, so that you can do more granular reporting across all of those things. And so with Google Free Edition, you're limited to 20. And really that has become pretty limiting especially for larger companies. And really by expanding to that 200 for metrics and dimensions, that allows you, really Google is catching up with Adobe in that respect. Mm-hmm. Adobe Analytics has always been, a little bit more customizable until 360, and 360 now has that capability, which I think really completes their suite of analytics.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, it's an interesting spot there to kind of insert the privacy and some of the concerns that people have over all those different dimensions. Does it start getting down to personally identifiable information or anything that people should be concerned about, or are there any features that help deal with that?
Yeah, so Google, and actually this exists in the free tool as well. So I would say not unique to 360 itself. Google in their document or their terms don't allow you to push any personally identifiable information into the platform. If it arrives in the platform, then you're in breach of that, and so you can never pass that kind of information into custom dimensions. And this was kind of their old definition pre-GDPR, right? So it's email, name, phone number, address, those kinds of things. Now, obviously, with GDPR and those components, Google has rolled out tools to address that with a user removal tool or request your removal tool, as well as data retention settings. But again, those exist in both.
Yeah, I mean, they had to accommodate on both sides. I mean, obviously, it's just, as soon as you get into all the different dimensions you can slice and dice, it starts to feel like you can get down to some pretty individual data. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about some of these big companies, you have to cut it down by, you're looking at product lines or you're looking at geography. There's a ton of different ways people want to look at this data that still has to do with the breadth and still preserves a ton of breadth, because they're just trying to make better decisions about their marketing, which is the crux of all of this.
One thing to consider about the expanded number of dimensions, though, is when you're pushing that data somewhere else, don't push every dimension out to the other platforms, because you're just kind of creating bloat. And in some instances, if you're using a cloud-based BI platform, then you could be reaching limits of the number of rows of data that you're allowed within your license fee. So that's just something to watch for.
That makes sense. Data management. Andy, you had some more to add there?
Yeah, and I guess one of the other key selling points around 360, and we've used this on our clients, is just that integration that they announced. I think it was late 2017 with Salesforce, and being able to push that data in. And I mean, integrations can be a whole other topic, but
which we will talk about a little bit too. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a key one when it comes to those custom dimensions, because what you end up being able to do is by integrating with Salesforce, you can push data back from Salesforce into Google Analytics, and any attribute that is stored on those Salesforce records can be pushed into a custom dimension. And then you can build audiences and do analysis of on-site or web behavior based on something about them in your CRM.
Yeah,
which is pretty valuable.
Well, it's huge, and I mean, I can tell that the excitement is growing. With all the different features and this particular part of the product and what we can do, which seems to be probably one of the meatier things in terms of analysis is concerned. Now, integrations. You talk about Salesforce. What other things currently integrate? I mean, obviously the Google's own products, I recognize that, but you talked about Salesforce. What other products, as some of our listeners are thinking about, well, here's all this stuff I have, Salesforce might be one of them. What else should they be keeping an eye out for within their MarTech stack or marketing technology suite?
Yeah. So it integrates with Google Bigquery, so Google's database platform. And what that native integration allows you to do is push hit level. Essentially every hit that occurs and goes to Google can be pushed directly into BigQuery as well. And so if you're doing advanced data modeling and advanced analysis using, from your database side and sitting something on top of that, then all of the data can go in at the hit level. So you don't have to you build another system that pulls it down for you and configures on IDs and things like that. It's just a native integration. So that one's pretty huge. And then we touched on Salesforce already, but I think in the scheme of where that fits into a broader, mature marketing program, I think it's worth calling out. So I talked about, in the case of Salesforce, you can push those attributes back into Google Analytics. But as you kind of touched on, that then integrates with other Google platforms. So you have Display and Video 360, Google Ads, Google Optimize, which is their on-site testing platform. And by pushing all of the data back from Salesforce into Google Analytics, from there you can build audiences in GA. When I say GA, Google Analytics, push the audiences or build audiences in GA, and then push those audiences to those other platforms. And what that allows you to do, and then not just analyze in GA based on something known in your CRM, but actually act on that data. And maybe it's a lead score that you're pushing in from Salesforce, or somebody's job title or interest, or anything from your CRM can then be pushed into these other platforms because it sits in GA and you're building audiences around that.
Right.
So you might run ads targeted at this person based on a community maybe they visited if you're a home builder. And then once they get to the site, you can target that experience using Google Optimize. So it's not just that they integrate with one or the other, it's that they can all be taken holistically to build a consistent user experience and really target kind of at the user level.
Yeah, and this is where we talk about making the most out of your first party data,
right,
and using that to personalize experiences on your site, and even the capability with Google to personalize experiences in the media landscape.
Yeah. So what's interesting, and from a product standpoint, and more specifically, the competitors, we brought up Adobe earlier, and so I suppose it's a little bit of a leading question here, but are there any competitors to Google Analytics in this case, or are they kind of a league of their own?
I would say Adobe Analytics is kind of the only one that, there's other players in the space, but in terms of a full ecosystem of different platforms that integrate, Adobe is probably, definitely the biggest competitor. But with them, they don't have quite as many of those integration points and the ability to see those users across device. So one of the advantages of Google, and specifically, I talked at the beginning about that cross-device view and being able to have that in GA, is Google rolled out a new feature a few months back called Signals. And what that essentially does is it leverages their own data that Google has about users, not even just from your data, but a lot of people log into Chrome, or a lot of people have Android devices, and they use all of that data to determine whether people visited your site on a mobile and then came back on desktop. So the challenge of joining those people if they don't log into your site has started to wash away a little bit, because Google knows. And granted, there obviously are privacy implications of that as well, but you have to have a certain amount of data for Google to even return anything. So they try to anonymize that and make sure that there's no privacy implications. But they do have that capability now to understand if you were exposed to an ad and then convert it on a different device, knowing that is the same person.
So the big thing that we're now highlighting is the integrations and all the different features from that same, which seems to be a competitive advantage for Google Analytics and 360 at a higher level here. What other integrations do you maybe foresee or predict folding into this that might be might be a reason why you'd want to evolve into this kind of a platform?
Yeah, and I don't know whether I kind of have been predicting this for a few years, and Adobe jumped on it first. Years ago, I said Adobe's going to buy Marketo,
right,
or marketing automation platform, and they did. And so they're now, they have an email program as part of their suite. And Google doesn't quite have that yet. So I feel like that is potentially an area, maybe not in the next year, but in the next couple of years, that they will either acquire somebody or build it to have their own ESP as part of it.
Well, and that's actually broader than ESP, right? I mean, so account-based marketing it enables, if you're thinking of it from that side. A lot, obviously listeners will think in terms of, buckets, or how do you bucket what these products can do. So marketing automation, email as being a part of it, which enables account-based marketing, or down to audience level or individual level, behavioral targeting and that sort of thing. What would we maybe dream of in terms of, God, I wish they one of these guys did this.
One of these guys being,
yeah, I mean, like, so Andy was saying Marketo, right, for Adobe, or one of those. I mean, what are some other places that we think that a product like this should be exploring?
Yeah, I think it probably gets into the realm of customer data platforms and that full cross-channel personalization experience, which Google is pretty close to here with the site side optimization and paid media optimization. But like Andy mentioned, it's that CRM aspect that's missing, that some of the CDP, the customer data platform tools out there do have. Yeah. So that's definitely one. And you think about, I don't know that Google's not in a position probably to acquire Salesforce, but that would be like, that would pull it all together, right? Because they've got the CRM aspect, and they've got, the email and social aspect, which Google, hasn't been able to figure out the social side of things in a sustainable sort of way. So that would be really interesting. I don't think that necessarily like the government would allow that to happen, because there's already talk of trying to break up Google and break up Facebook. So I don't know how much more they could get away with in terms of huge acquisitions like that.
Yeah. So this is where integrations become more and more important. The other part of it, I think, is kind of this location-based stuff and what they can do on that side with Android specifically, but probably even more broadly in terms of any integrations around location specific. I know retailers, that's a big thing about how do you get people into store, and attribution for what did I do that influenced someone to show up, like a live ramp or something like that that's out there that helps you figure that out.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of their initial play with Google Pay, right? Is to start to capture some of that data.
Yeah.
But it's just not quite ubiquitous enough, I think, to.
So with this is then some of these things are maybe the impetus for somebody moving over to a Google 360, knowing that more and more of this stuff is going to start showing up, I would imagine. Because the pace of this is where we started this conversation is 6 months ago, we were just learning about this, and it seemed a little bit like vaporware to where it is now, which is, powerful, really powerful based on a lot of stuff that Andy was saying. Andy, what do you think in terms of now somebody saying, hey, you know what, I'm in. I think that Google 360 is something, or Analytics 360 is something that we should be investing in. What are some of the common implementation challenges for Analytics 360? Because Lord knows they're probably sitting on GA right now, Google Analytics at the moment. So is there any new challenges that they should be considering?
Yeah, I would say new challenges, they're probably not new, but they're definitely challenges that if you're ponying up for 360, you need to get your house in order. And so typically, what we run into is a lot of data integrity issues with any. I don't think we've done a tracking audit where we haven't run into a long list of issues that they had no idea existed. But then I guess beyond the data quality and integrity side of it, which I think is I think we've done a podcast on this.
Yeah.
But in terms of the making data a tool and planning for what you should be tracking and what you could be doing with data, and really evaluating from that standpoint, that's what we typically try to do when we're going through a new implementation is look back and evaluate the business, do your business requirements and stakeholder interviews and things like that, and understand what they care about. And they have no idea they can track it and they can integrate it. When I say they, it's typically clients or marketers that didn't realize we could track a certain thing. And so trying to anticipate what those data questions will be and plan for what's going to be most useful to integrate with these other platforms. Those are the challenges that we typically face in one of these implementations, because as I mentioned, you get all of these new dimensions you can track and those integration points. And so we want to leverage that and define those integration points and the different attributes that should be captured. And then I guess this is a more tactical item on it, but it is critical, especially with a bigger implementation like this, is defining a data layer. And so what a data layer is it's essentially a snippet of code that exists on every page of your site that tells your tag management platform something about the page. And it could be the product category, the product name, the SKU. I'm just using an e-commerce example, but everything that you might need to know about that page, and making sure that's consistently applied across the entire business, and defining all of those data layer elements so that they're coming directly from your database and your tag management system's not trying to guess or look for something on the page. That is a challenge that we always face, and make sure that we go through the steps to really define that and work with the development teams and write the technical requirements to get those in their hands and make that part of the site.
Yeah. I mean, all of this, to enable any of this, it's a partnership. You've got tech, you've got implementation. You talked about data quality. Obviously the needs on the side. What do marketers need in order to make good decisions, attributes, and all that kind of stuff. So it takes a village, I think, particularly as it relates to something as significant as 360.
Yep.
And you brought up the data quality thing too. I mean, just a plug for the episode I think that you're talking about is one of our earlier episodes of our podcast is the importance of data quality, garbage in, garbage out. So be sure to check that one out, because I think it goes into that detailed quite a bit. Yeah,
and you alluded to it, both of you, but it's another one of those scenarios where it's not just about the platform and getting the platform and the new shiny object. There's the people and the process that goes along with that, and both those are even more critical than the platform.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's one thing you see all the time, right? Is like, people getting involved in it, and are they putting the right information in, but also the workflow of it all as well.
Yeah. Well, and there's a training aspect of it as well. So I think, just to wrap up that point on the challenges and the things that we go through, is not just incorporating, all those groups into planning the implementation and what data you want to track, but when you're done, make sure people know how to use it and what was implemented, and really get that data out there so that people understand what they can do with this newfound tool.
Newfound power.
Yes, probably better.
There you go. Well, guys, thanks for joining and educating our listeners on the power of this particular tool. I know we'll go through in future podcasts some of the other tools that we put to use, because there's the aspect of the tool, and then there's the aspect of actually implementing these tools and using them right. So I appreciate your guys' guidance on that.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for letting me geek out a little bit.
You're always welcome to do that here. So listeners, be sure to check out our partners page at reddoor.biz/partners, where you can learn more about Red Door Interactive's relationship with Google, as well as learn about the tools, technology, and services we provide. And while you're there, check out our Learn section of our website to read or share the show notes from this episode and others that we've done in the past. So as always, subscribe to the Marketing Remix, leave us a review on iTunes, and we look forward to you next time.